Okay, so welcome to today's information session about sharing the Early Years Ordinarily Available Inclusive Practice Guide, Section 2 Annex. I'm Jessica Bubb, I'm an advisory teacher for the Autism and Social Communication team. I also work with the SEND strategy for 2 days a week.
Hi, I'm Sue Woods. I'm Early Years Consultant with Early Help. So I work with the Early Years Preschools, Day Nurseries and Childminders and the Early Years and Childcare Advisors. So the Ordinarily Available Inclusive Practice Guide, the document you can see on the screen is the document that's being developed for schools. And the idea of having this document is to support all early years, all schools and early years settings to provide effective and consistent practice for children with additional needs. The real focus is around making sure the child's at the centre and that we're offering high quality inclusive practice to all children with SEND. Part of the aim of it is also to increase parental confidence that their child's needs can be met within schools and early years provision using the graduated approach and the strategies that are recommended within the setting. And we're asking settings to look at this tool as a resource to help them to provide that that support to children with SEND and to use the resource they've got to deliver some of this, which might mean they don't need to come for additional funding or those sorts of things. But it's really about making sure we're level in the playing field and making sure all children with SEND can access the support they need within universal provision. So it's been developed by a task and finish group, which involved lots of different practitioners from different realms. Professionals who work for West Sussex, as well as schools practice, and then we've included some early years providers in developing the specific early years toolkit which we're talking about today.
So the basis of the document that you can see was Portsmouth's document that they had originally produced, and then over, as Sue said, over 50 local authority representatives from schools, preschools and local government officers developed a West Sussex document, and that document was sent out to all primary schools, a hard copy of that last term. So hopefully all schools will have received that. So what does ordinarily available mean? Well, it comes from the Code of Practice, so it's nothing new. It's a term that's been around for a while, but I don't think perhaps it's been identified or used by many of us regularly. So it refers to mainstream support that could be reasonably provided through a school's resources or settings resources, and other local authorities might refer to similar guides, as you've just seen, as ordinarily available provision. In West Sussex, the task and finish groups that we mentioned previously decided that it would be really useful to have inclusive and practice in the title, because that's what the document's about. So that's where the OAIP guide came from, so ordinarily available inclusive practice.
So the document is divided up into two sections. So section 1 is looking at the general practice and provision within a school or setting. So it's looking at the various different sections, like your policies and structures, and organisational training for staff, your ethos, and all the kind of elements of high quality inclusive practice, or the quality first teaching that you might describe in the school. That was written originally, and we've looked at some of the terminology from an early years perspective, and that has led to a change in some of the terminology. So pastoral care is going to be changed into social and emotional support for children. So it's kind of inclusive language that spans the early years provision and schools as well. Section 2 is the area that's much more specific. So it's looking at the specific needs of children under the SEND areas of need. So that's the section where you'd look at to find support for specific children within your setting under those areas, and links to strategies, advice and guidance through the document.
So we thought it would be useful to give you some information about the journey so far in terms of the early years ordinarily available inclusive practice guide. So COVID did put a stop to some of our plans. So we had planned in the spring term at Spring Term Networks last year to share the ordinarily available inclusive practice guide, the purple document that you saw, we plan to share that at early years networks just to gain feedback from early years practitioners. However, we were unable to do that because of the first lockdown, and so we had to change our plans quite rapidly. So during the summer term and the summer holidays, Sue and I, together with some early years and childcare advisors and other local government officers, got together and looked at the document and looked at any particular changes that we thought might need to happen to make it inclusive and practical for early years settings. So we did that through the summer term and worked on getting together a draft document. And then from there, we planned several task and finish groups where early years settings joined us, and we looked at particular elements of the draft document that we had produced so far. We got their feedback around how it would work for them, terminology used, any additions that they thought would be helpful, and any amendments. So it was very much a draft document at that stage. We didn't want to produce something, a finished article, and say this is how it is. We wanted to collaborate with those early years providers and early years practitioners to have a document that would be user friendly and the most useful that it could be. And from there, we amalgamated all the feedback and made subsequent changes to the document that you can download, and I'll show you where you can get that from in a minute, and also to the electronic information that's available on the Tools for Schools and Settings website. The draft document was also shared at Inco-Senco networks, and we gained information that way and feedback that way as well. So the document that we have at the moment is still a piloted document, which Sue is going to explain a bit more in detail in a few slides on. But actually, we have had the input from the early years sector within West Sussex. So some key messages that we gained from the task and finish groups were that kind of feedback around adding websites and documents as they come out. There was lots of feedback around settings and practitioners wishing for a hard copy document, but the realisation that actually this can become out of date quite quickly. Sue and I personally don't usually read a West Sussex document, but this was really good, which really heartened us to see that this document that there was value in it already. So I've just realised that I took your slide.
No, that's fine. I just think what Jess is really sort of saying is that we really want it to be a practical tool that supports you, and getting the feedback from practitioners that they did find it was going to be a useful tool was really helpful and heartening to us. So and that is something we'll continue to make sure we're developing through this. So the feedback's been really positive so far, but we always welcome more feedback and more suggestions of how to develop this to make this work for you.
Thanks, Sue. So in response to that initial feedback that we got from that draft document that we shared in the first instance, so we've proposed several changes. So the section 1, as Sue said, in that original document that was produced, the hard copy, the purple document, that spanned the age from 0 to 25, but there were obviously some additions that needed to be made to encompass early years practice. But it was recognised actually by the task and finish group and senior leaders within the SEND strategy that much of the quality first teaching was relevant across all age phases. So small additions will be made to section 1 to include early years specific terminology. Obviously that won't be in the hard copy, but it has already been amended online, and the changes have been made online, as I say. So and then from that feedback, a specific strategy section was developed, which we're here to show you today, which will be labelled an annex really for the early years. And so those strategies will be early years specific to include more tailored approaches for early years children with identified needs.
So the timeline so far is, as Jess said, some of this has been altered due to COVID, but since July, and into this term, we've been looking at developing the tools. So we did some work over the summer with our early years and childcare advisors, and then we had some task and finish groups, and we had early years practitioners, both from early years settings and within schools, as being part of that group, who have provided some really useful feedback and ideas and tools that they use within their setting that we can feed into this toolkit. And they sort of tested it within their settings and gave feedback. It went to the network meetings in the autumn term as to have a kind of brief overview, so settings could again give some feedback. All of that feedback fed into developing this pilot document that we're launching from now. And what we'd like you to be doing alongside all the other tasks, I know you've got this currently, is to just have a go at use this document. Try it in your practice. If you've got a child who you've got concerns about any areas of development, there's a useful tool that Jess will show later on that you can do a search around the areas of need that they've got, which then links into advice and guidance that you can access. So feel free to use, try it out, talk to the other practitioners in your setting, so you're using it together as a toolkit, and then if you have got any other ideas and suggestions of additional resources or changes in format that might be helpful to use that, Jess will also give you an email address that you can send any feedback to. We will be doing some more formal evaluation of this as we go through, a bit of sort of response online survey to get some feedback about the impact it's having with practitioners, and then we'll, over the summer, we'll pull in all that feedback together to make a final version. I'm saying final version, it's never going to be a final version. So from September, we'll do a formal launch of the resource to use in schools and settings, but we will have an ongoing review process, because we know that there's always research going on. We always find out more about how children learn and develop and how they can be supported. So we want it to be a tool that gives you the most up-to-date information we possibly can, the access to the best resources, but we want to make sure it's consistent information and it's accurate and high quality. So the format for that will be that any ideas and suggestions for new resources will go through a group that can review, make sure it gives that high quality consistent information to you, and then any new information will be added on a regular basis, and equally any information that becomes out of date can be removed from that. So this can be your one-stop shop for the most up-to-date accurate information available, and that will be an ongoing process from September, but the formal launch of the sort of finalised version will be from September. And then, because actually the most important thing for us is, and for you as well, is what impact this has for children. So we will be looking at how we can evidence if the impact this has had for children, and if there are things that we can do better, what those would be, so we can keep improving and developing this tool.
Thanks, Sue. Okay, so we thought it would be helpful to actually show you where the tool is and where you can access it on the Tools for Schools and Education Settings website. So the original concept for the website came from the Task and Finish group, those original primary ones, and it's been developed in partnership with the local offer. So as Sue mentioned, we wanted practitioners and early years educators be able to access reliable and useful information when supporting children in the early years. It's a really user-friendly site, yet the search function works really well. We have made sure that when we've added any additional early years resources to the website, that we've always labelled it with early years, so you can do a quick search, and I have tested it for quite a few of the documents that we have uploaded, and it's worked quite well in terms of being able to locate it quite quickly. The website also has a pinboard feature, which enables users to save and return back to information that they frequently use and that's particularly relevant. It's organised into 4 main areas, so inclusion, SEN toolkit, where you'll find the OAIP, team around the school education setting, and that's actually helpful in order to find training, support and advice, and the child's journey, which it contains lots of information about transition, which is particularly helpful, I think, and some information for parents on there as well. We're also regularly writing blogs, So at the bottom, you can't see it here, but I'll show you when we go to the front facing page. We're writing blogs. So one of the blogs that I wrote was around Now and Next. There's one up at the moment about the early years OAIP, and we're regular. So if you have any ideas for blogs that you would like us to write, or you would indeed like to be invited to write, please do let us know. Obviously, you probably haven't got time at the moment, but in the future, if that's something that you'd be interested in, do let us know. So there's 2 links here, and we will be sharing, as I said, the PowerPoint presentation on tools for schools and settings, but we'll paste both of these links into the chat at the end of our presentation so that you will have those to use now. So I am going to go to this one, which is the front facing page, to show you how to navigate through to the early years inclusive practice guide. So if you just click on here, that hopefully will take us to, yes, there we go. Now what I am going to do, my default browser opens in Internet Explorer, and Tools for Schools and Settings doesn't work as well in Internet Explorer, so I'm going to just paste that link into Google Chrome quickly. So, oh, it's already there, but I'll paste it so you can see that it works. Sue, can you still see?
Yeah, that's all good.
Yeah, great, thank you. So you'll see there, that's the page that I showed you just now. This is where the blog posts usually appear down here. So here are the blogs that I mentioned just now, which are just really short articles to share information really, or interesting subjects. So the way that you get to the early years OAIP is via the Send Toolkit page. So you click on here, and then you want to go to the Ordinarily Available Inclusive Practice Guide, and then that's the document that we shared with you in the beginning. That is for school provision. So section 1 is still relevant, but actually we would suggest that you come down to this document here, which is the Annex for early years. So you can click on there, and that downloads the document. It is a rather large document, so but actually it had to be that large in terms of accessibility. So it's got there's section 1 there, which it contains the examples of reasonable adjustments for quality first teaching, and then the strategy specific section for early years for identified needs does, I think it's section 2 starts on 41. So I'm sorry that's moving so fast on your screen. So I'll just show you what that looks like in the document, in the paper copy document that you're able to download. So it lists an identified barrier or need. So here we've got difficulties in being understood with what they say, with what they want to say, and then we've got some ideas for provision and strategies listed there. And then underneath we have links and resources, and the links are still live in the downloadable document, but obviously when you download the copy, those links, the information isn't there. So just being aware that the links and resources could be updated quite regularly, so to just make sure that you're checking with the electronic version. So I'm going to show you now what the electronic version looks like. So this is the downloadable document, as I said, and I'm going to show you online what that looks like. So here we are, we've got Annex Section 2, Early Years Foundation Stage, Ordinarily Available Inclusive Provision Guide. So if we click on here, that gives you some information about the early years OAIP, that if you want to share that with colleagues. There's another downloadable download button there where you can download the hard copy that we've just seen. But if you click on this tab here, this tile here, you can see that that takes us to, so early years difficulties being understood and with what they want to say. So that's what we just looked at the other on the downloadable document. The strategies are listed there, and then underneath we've got all the live links. So if I click on there, that will take me to the Inclusion Development Programme materials. And as Sue said, any other ideas that you have for links and resources would be greatly appreciated. Just going back, I'll take you to another section. So let's go to social and emotional mental health. And then you can click on here. So this is attachment difficulties, and then underneath there's some suggested strategies again, and then links to resources. And other websites are also there. So that is how, in a brief nutshell, I realised that was quite fast, but that's how the Tools for Schools and Settings works. So hopefully that's been helpful. We'll go back to the presentation now. Okay, so can you see my screen, Sue?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, great, thank you. So what next? We would appreciate still people joining the task and finish groups, if that's something that you would be interested in. But actually what we mainly want you to do is download or share electronically the early years annex of the OAIP, share with your colleagues within your settings and schools, share at staff and locality meetings, provide any feedback that you can at network meetings, annotate this document, really get to grips with it, use it and find out what works and what doesn't work, and anything that's missing. So there's an email address that I'll give you at the end. So if there's anything missing or anything that you come across that you think, oh, this should be included, or I'm not sure that this is suitable in here, please do get in touch. We really, as we said, want this to be a useful tool for early years settings. There will be some consultations coming out in Have Your Say, so please do participate in those as well. So here's the email address, and I'll paste that into the chat at the end of the presentation so that you are able to make contact with us for those suggested amendments or any other feedback that you have for us. Lastly, we'd just like to thank you for being here today and joining us for this information session.
Thank you.